Have you ever wanted to leave your big city life behind and trade in all the hustle and bustle for a more simple, quiet life in an average small town, where you can meet the friendly, interesting locals, learn about their vibrant culture and values, maybe even find the true love of your life, the kind only seen in your dreams, and prove that you are worthy to win her heart by selflessly doing various odd tasks for the town's inhabitants? Also, they will reward you by increasing your experience in kissing. Then I have a game for you. Chulip is a sort of adventure exploration game that was released for the PlayStation 2, though in reality it defies all attempts to try to pin it to any specific genre. Originally released in 2002 for Japan, it took 5 years and several delays to get it to its 2007 launch in North America. Victor Interactive took on Japanese publishing duties, while Natsume later licensed the game for the North American release. More on that later. Jumping right in, you are introduced to a man popping his head out of a hole in a tree. After getting your name, a girl that he says is the love of your life enters the scene, and he instructs you to kiss her. But this whole bizarre sequence turns out just to be a dream, foreshadowing the end of the game, and you awake in the bed of a small truck backing into an alleyway. It seems that you, along with your father, are in the process of moving into a cheap rental property on the edge of a small village in the middle of the night. Your father encourages you to go explore around the village while he unpacks. But first he sort of explains the game's health mechanic, without going into much detail, by telling you that you are weak of heart and should be careful. You also learn that going to the bathroom is the game's save mechanic, because Japan. And thus your wacky adventures begin. You start off with just a section of town to explore, as some other areas are either blocked off with debris or are inaccessible because the pedestrian crossing lights won't work, not allowing you to cross the street, because jaywalking is very illegal in Japan. This limitation does a good job of not overwhelming you right out of the gate with the full zaniness of your surroundings, rather guiding you a little bit at a time before delving into the depths of the game. Simple introductions with your new neighbors don't build much on the story of the town at first, but do, rather rudely I might add, enforce the fact that you are poor and they don't think very highly of a new stranger coming into their lives. In your first jaunt around town, you will meet the girl from the intro. With a short dialogue scene, you try to kiss her as directed. She rebukes your advance and slaps you away, shooting you down. She very plainly states that because you are poor, inexperienced kisser, you are definitely not her type. With a sunken heart and down 1 health point, you slink off back home. After explaining what transpired on your first foray around town to your father, he devises a plan to help you win the love of your life's heart. You will need to write her a love letter, but it seems his letter writing set has been lost in the move. This becomes the task of your life, in which you must complete to succeed. After asking around and a few simple tasks completed for the townsfolk, you gain possession of the requisite letter writing set, and proceed to write what must be the worst love letter in history. Heading out to mail your absolutely horrible love letter, a man stuck in a telephone pole goes on a long-winded rant and then runs off, thus unblocking the tunnel to the center of town, giving you access to more of the village and the mailbox to drop off your letter. After depositing your letter, an unknown voice harshly critiques it and instructs you to visit him in order to learn how to properly write a real love letter. On your way home, a sewer cover by your house rumbles, leading you to go underground. Here you discover the owner of the voice that was so critical of your letter, and get some gameplay lessons. It seems you need to strengthen your heart, which is accomplished by making out with as many people as you can find. Oh, and recover a better love letter writing set to craft the perfect intentions of your love. The main storyline then progresses by trying to settle a labor dispute between some teachers and the owner of the school, along with performing various quest lines for the villagers to win their hearts over. These tasks range from getting someone a job at the local factory that specializes in building factories, impressing the bathhouse owner by correctly bathing yourself, and procuring a special eggplant for the middle-aged spinster to quell her nightly raging. Try not to think too much about that last one. In your travels, you will also come across cracks in the ground. Peering into these cracks, you will discover a whole slew of subterranean abodes, inhabited by a host of even stranger residents. These people will only come above ground at a specific time of day, and each has their own set of kissing requirements. Some examples are a space enthusiast with a rocket strapped to his head. You need to wait until he returns from orbit successfully. A cranky mini kaiju who rages and roars around until he tires himself out. A poncho-wearing man who you have to beat in a game of red light, green light. And, well, this guy that pops up in the hospital for some reason. His name's Chuck, and let's just leave it at that. These time-based encounters are used to highlight the day-night cycle of the game, but you have no set curfew. You can wander around town at all hours, as long as you can avoid the policemen patrolling in the streets after dark. But in order to upgrade your hearts, you must sleep at home. When you do, your father will converse with the guy from the intro, named the Lover's Tree, and tell of all your kissing conquests. Depending on the number of kisses you've acquired, your total hearts will be increased, and your hearts refilled. When you wake up, you can then talk with your father, who will give you clues on what you need to do next to progress in the story. With events happening at all hours, there are a few time-skipping mechanics in the game. Reading different comic books available at the shop will advance time in different amounts. And a bit later in the game, you gain access to an alarm clock by kissing a certain character, who will fix the one in the house for you. This will allow you to get up at any specific time you dial in when you go to sleep. This is very helpful in collecting the sweet lovin' of the underground residents later in the game. When you feel that your heart is full enough to prove your love, and you've progressed enough to obtain and return the love letter set, you can visit the man in the sewer and write your magnificent love letter. But before being able to mail it, you will be given a series of tests, measuring your knowledge of the inhabitants of the town. After passing all 3 trials, you will finally be able to mail your good love letter and accomplish your life's mission, or at least the game's objective, and win the heart of your true love. When the game was first released in Japan only, it was met with the resounding meh. But even with sales that can only very generously be called lackluster, publisher Natsume bought the rights for the North American release. They were expecting a simple, straightforward localization effort, and originally slated it for a 2004 release, but the translation process was anything but simple. Natsume claimed that the repeated delays were due to the developer Punchline not having the time and resources to handle the additional artwork and development for localization. This was mostly due to the fact that they were already in full development of their second game, called Rule of Rose, a game which is a massive departure from Chulip not only in game style, but story and tone as well. That game is covered in its own episode, though. Ultimately, Natsume had to farm out different parts of the localization to third parties to even get Chulip released. This led to some parts of the text translation having grammatical errors, and some rather interesting graphic translation choices. So in the end, what Natsume thought would take a year or less worth of work took over 4 years from the Japanese release to ship. Interestingly, this led to Punchline's first developed game, Chulip, actually being their second title released in North America, as Rule of Rose was released a half-year prior. Now, Chulip is often described as a game that is far more enjoyable to watch than to play. But if you are someone that is hooked on its undeniable and over-the-top weirdness, experiencing it yourself and appreciating for all it has to offer firsthand can be a whole lot of fun. Thanks for watching.